Hello, class. My name is Brenda Hernandez. Our LatinX group is based on the historical and contemporary experiences of Mexican migration to the United States. In the following presentation, we will discuss the following on migration patterns, their journey, and reasoning for migration. Also, we will examine the role of the U.S. as a settler nation. Lastly, we will touch on how anti-immigrant sentiments affect this group and why this issue matters. First off, let's start with Mexico's geographical and historical background. Mexico is located in the continent of North America. It covers 1,943,945 square kilometers of land. It became an independent state in 1821 after gaining its power from Spain. In that year, Mexico and Spain signed a treaty that ended the war for independence. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed February 2nd, 1848, ended the Mexican-American War. The outcome was the treaty added 525,000 square miles to the U.S. territory. Mexicans have lived in the U.S. before both even became different countries. No Hispanic group has contributed more to the nation's wealth and success than Mexicans, yet it makes America more uneasy about the future. This Latinx group is diverse in different languages, and Mexico is the most populous Spanish-speaking country to this day.
Hello, classmates. My name is Raquel Chavez. I am introducing to you two sources for our Latinx group on Mexicans. The first source is a quote from the book Harvest of Empire. In chapter 5, Mexicans Pioneers of a Different Type. This quote says, Mexican Americans, meanwhile, face a frustrating identity problem similar to that of Puerto Rican. They are both native-born and immigrants, pioneers and aliens, patriots and rebels. Mexican historical and present experience in the United States have overlapped on the intersectional analysis of race, immigration status, and social class. These social structures play an important role in American society because it brings a greater understanding of how and why the United States has created this group's migration. Mexican roots and identity are often suppressed by this country and other communities. They deal with systemic racism to Mexican Americans not being recognized as true Americans. Unfortunately, this nationality has been classified as a minority group along with other Latinx communities such as Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, and Central Americans. Some of the challenges that Latinx group faces in the United States is the unfair treatment found in education for immigrant children, the economy for labor workers, and in politics for immigrant families. Mexicans are exploited by cheap labor and face minimal to no work benefits in health, vision, and dental. Unemployment is a major social issue that tends to affect Mexican labor workers since many have seasonal employment. In addition, Mexican immigrants are denied work due to their immigration status. This also places a permanent challenge for Mexican immigrant families because Latinx communities come from a low income status where government social services are limited. For instance, some may qualify for low-income houses within a time frame, and others are waitlisted and are searching for an inexpensive place to rent. Following my second source is a documentary that focuses on Mexico and Peru. It examines how residents struggle to fight off negative stereotypes and lack on upward mobility in their nation. The economy in Mexico is weak and the value is cheap. And that is why Mexican migration in the United States has increased over the years. Thank you.
Discrimination here in Mexico. Yes, we are a racist society. If you are in the cities, they stop you, ask you for your ID card, they make you sing the national anthem, and they could accuse you of coming from Cuba to destabilize things or something like that. It isn't said, but in every Mexican family, there is a black person. And do you know what the city folks say? They say, he was born black, but we love him anyway. Tell me about Memin Penguin. Do you think it's racist or not? No. No, okay. No, you go out into the street and ask people and they're not worried. It's just a character. They don't identify with him. He's still just in stories. It's kind of like laughing at yourself if you take it with humor and with sarcasm. Why did Jesse Jackson come here to see Vicente Fox? Jesse Jackson should have worried about all the blacks that go to work there and aren't treated like people. They're treated like third-class people. Because he's not interested in black people who are living. He's interested in Memin Penguin. Politics. Política.
Y por negro me desprecias, yo no niego mi color, que entre perlas y diamantes el moreno es el mejor. En la noche me cobijo la sombra de mi color, no me importa lo que griten, este hombre trae sabor en mis venas.
Israel Reyes, a teacher in the Costa Chican town of Cuaque, is waging a campaign to promote Afro-Mexican pride. He hosts a radio show, Cimarron, the voice of the Afro-Mestizos, which broadcasts bi-weekly throughout the Costa Chica. He's trying to force the country to recognize the rights of its black citizens.
The first step is being included in the census, to make it known that there are black people in Mexico. And those black people didn't get stuck in colonial times. And they aren't just in history books in the times of slavery. Blacks are here now, right now, today. And they are demanding that their rights be recognized.
Do you think your effort will be successful to change the census?
We started a process in which we had talks with government authorities. At the last minute, they informed us that it's not possible to include a question on the census, but we are pushing forward a pilot census for the black population in Mexico.
Oh, that's good. How will it benefit the black community if they could say Afro, Blanco, Indigenous?
The benefits would be public policies for these populations, better living conditions, education, health, housing, access to federal programs. If we don't start, we will never know how many blacks there are in Mexico.
Good luck. I think it's very, very important.
We are being visited today by a very well-known professor, Professor Gates. Professor, what do you hope the results of your work in the Costa Chica will be?
I hope that it makes Americans more aware of Mexico's complex racial past. Mexico's black past didn't just disappear. It's still here, and in two forms. It's an essential part of the history, culture, and DNA of the country. But for some, it's written on their faces. The visible remnant of all that didn't melt in the mestizo melting pot that we call Mexico. Mexico is a victim of its own success. It had a noble idea. It abolished slavery in 1830, 33 years before the United States did. But it had a romantic idea that if it eliminated racial categories, it would eliminate racism.
My name is Ariana Ramirez, and I will be talking about the migration patterns and sociological theory of migration. The migration patterns of Mexicans into the United States marked immigrants' largest flow in the early 18th and 19th centuries. Mexicans' migration was to run away from poverty and violence as they sought stability and employment. Mexico is characterized by weak security, high crime rates, and minimal less income services such as clothing, shelter, and food. They were the early settlers of the United States and the largest groups of immigrants, with a population of about 7 million. South Texas had the most population of Mexican immigrants. After being overthrown by the Anglos and most of their lands taken, these Mexicans kept migrating to the southwest parts. Between the years 1900s and 1930s, over 1 million Mexicans had arrived in those regions. By the year 1920, the Rio Grande Valley was segregated, with Mexicans consisting of over 90% of the population, with the minority, the whites controlling the land and the powers of politics. At the end of Second World War, most Mexicans returned home, making the beginning of reduced immigrants from Mexico to the United States.
My name is Montserrat Hernandez, and I'll I'll be talking about where they immigrate within the US, their immigration journey, and why they immigrate. Within the US, Mexicans immigrate to California, Texas, New York, Florida, New Jersey, and Illinois. Their immigration journey includes crossing borders, hunger, dehydration, death, leaving their families behind, and experiencing cultural shock. Cultural shock happens when people experience an unfamiliar way of life and routine. Why do they immigrate? There are more employment opportunities here, which is beneficial because family members who immigrate to the US send money back to their families in Mexico since US money is worth more over there. In 2016, Mexico received up to $27 billion from the US. They also come because it's a higher chance of education, freedom, experience their religion freely, better lives, and come for better lives for themselves and their families.
Hello, class. My name is Mari Carmen. A person is defined by race, class, gender, sexuality, a person's immigration status, and language. Immigrants have been treated as if their language barrier defines them as a person, as well as their immigration status. Mexicans are seen as second-class citizens.
My name's Diana, and I'm going to be further discussing the intersectional theory. Due to the unfair treatment given by the U.S. and surrounding communities, Mexicans face a higher chance of deportation, unemployment, and unhealthy working conditions. An example of this is Mexicans who work as field workers are expected to work in bad air quality conditions, extreme heat, as well as rainy and cloudy days. We can all see that Mexican people face discrimination and prejudice because of these factors known as their intersectionality, which in their case are race, class, immigration status, and language.
My name is Leslie Gutierrez, and I will be speaking on the U.S. as a settler nation and anti-immigrant sentiments. Mexicans were colonized by the English and Spanish in the 1500s. Natives of these lands were forced out, lynched, and enslaved. In 1820, immigrants from the U.S., Ireland, and Germany began settling in the Nueces Strip, which is south of Texas. Mexicans were looked at as an obstacle and were cheated out of their lands. Not knowing how to read or write really incapacitated them from knowing their rights. Rio Bravo, now known as Rio Grande, is the river between Texas and Mexico. That's a dangerous route to take when crossing to the US. Mexican economy finds it difficult to feed and clothe the population. They are unwanted in the US unless they're needed, back then and currently. While Roosevelt was in office, a program was agreed on by the US and Mexico, the Bracero program, which allowed 100,000 Mexican workers to be imported until it ended in 1965 because of the poor wage and awful working conditions, also discrimination. A large portion stayed in the US illegally. Family members relied on the money for survival. This is something that's no different from today.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Gomez, and I'll be reading the conclusion. The issue at hand is the abuse of LatinX individuals. These people put their lives on the line for a better life, not only for themselves, but for their children as well. Yet, LatinX groups get poor pay for doing hard labor. Along with that, they get harassed. Immigrants get discriminated against, as well as racially profiled. Some things that people don't consider is that there is always going to be a language barrier when immigrants come to the United States. People use the language barrier to belittle them. These Mexicans shouldn't face the issues they have to deal with, since they do the jobs that we know many people wouldn't want to do, and in harsh conditions. These people mean no harm. They want a better life with education for their children. They escaped a bad situation and are welcomed in with racism and hatred. Everyone deserves a better life, and for many, it's the United States.
My name is Crystal, and to wrap this presentation up, basically Mexican immigration come to have that American dream in which everyone dreams of, and they just want a better life and education for their families, yet they are given the hardest part, in which is working in the fields, in which they face inequalities in their country and in the US.